Welcome, everybody, to Insights in Action. Today, I've got Logan Lyles from Business Builders Agency. Logan, how's it going today?
It is going great, man. Thank you so much for the invite. I am a perennial podcaster at this point. I'm usually on the other side of the mic hosting, but I never say no to a guest spot. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And at the end of this, I'm really going to be curious as to how it feels to be on the other side. So remind me
Yeah.
to ask you. So I'd love to just start this off with learning a little bit more about you and learning a little bit more about business builders.
Yeah. So for me, I've come to kind of describe myself as like a salesperson who doesn't quite feel comfortable only in sales and a marketer who doesn't totally feel comfortable on that side of the fence either. So I graduated college in '08 with a journalism degree and promptly got into technology sales because that makes sense, right? There were a few things going on with the economy in '08 that had something to do with that, but got into sales there. I was strictly in B2B sales, mostly in organizations without any marketing support. So smile and dial and pound the pavement, making cold calls in person, like those were the things that were the mantras of my early sales career. And then I saw how content marketing was kind of evolving, kind of looking over here at like, okay, what's HubSpot doing and what's this inbound thing? It kind of was interesting to me because of my journalism roots. And then in 2018, I had the chance to join a B2B podcast production agency, which is where I first got on the mic, going back to what we were talking about earlier. After that, I spent 2 years in house as a marketer within a SaaS company. And then here this year, I joined Business Builders to jump back into the agency side because kind of going back to where I opened, I really love talking about marketing, but I also love the one to one networking, closing deals, helping people solve problems, working with clients. And so selling marketing services, I get a little bit of both worlds and don't get that feeling of I'm a weirdo who doesn't fit over here in sales and a big sales or a marketer over here who gets looked at weird when I talk about things the way a salesperson would say. And so right now I am responsible for new business development at Business Builders. We are a StoryBrand certified agency, one of the few in the country, and I think maybe the only one who holds that moniker, as well as being a platinum HubSpot partner. So we combine helping companies get their messaging right. We see a lot of marketing go wrong because there's really not a plan in place. You jump into the tactics and the channels, but you haven't spent enough time thinking about the messaging and the story you're telling to the market. And then we implement that with tactical things so that we're not just giving people, hey, here's this great messaging consultation. Now, good luck. We actually help folks then implement that into what does that look like for your website, at your ongoing marketing channels, video, those sorts of things. So that's a little bit about where I am today. It was kind of a winding road to get here, but excited and have a chance to work with a lot of great clients at Business Builders right now.
That's really cool. And we have a really similar story as you're talking. I started my career in tech sales as well. And it's
Mhm.
really interesting when you come in from the B2B tech side, it's really on your SDRs and your AEs on having gone through that path. Like
Mhm.
they don't focus a lot on marketing, or at least they didn't. And I think that's starting to change now. But it's really on the shoulders of SDRs and AEs. How many meetings are you getting and all that? And I think now SaaS companies, to these tech companies are really starting to focus on like, okay, how can we actually invest a little bit of money in marketing? How can we build a little bit of a brand here so that people come to us, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the things that was, I thought a year or so into my sales career, I'm like, I'm just going to quit because I hate cold calling. I hate interrupting people. I hate just trying to pitch people who haven't shown interest. And once I got more into the marketing side, when I joined the podcast agency in 2018, I was like, oh, this is what it feels like when people come to you and you have to even ask them like, how did you hear about us?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm not quite sure. Or my favorite was like, "Oh, Logan, I've been watching your videos on LinkedIn. I feel like I already know you. Let's talk about this." That was an entirely different opening to a sales conversation than the interruption of, "Can I get 15 minutes of your time?" And so that shift for me, I really felt it in a real way selling in kind of both of those environments.
And one is so much more fun and just way clearly better than the other, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I really want to talk about this story brand framework, and I know your agency uses this as a foundational element in clarifying a client's message. So, how do you ensure that this framework remains adaptable for businesses that are scaling or undergoing like significant changes?
Yeah. So I think the foundation is always the same. And one of the problems that we are able to easily identify when folks have not learned about or implemented the story brand framework in their messaging is the brand is the hero of the story. Their website leads with how many years they've been in business, how great their product is, and they're leaving really the hero of the story out of it because in our own minds, in the lives we live in business and outside of it, we're the protagonist of our own story. We are the center of our own universe often. And so when we don't adapt our messaging to that, we're kind of fighting human nature a bit. We're fighting that reality. And so we're often helping people make that first shift. In story brand talk, it's you're not the guy, be the guide, not the hero. Your potential customer, they are the hero of the story and you need to position yourself as the guide. And so we walk people through what does that look like? What are the attributes of the hero? What are the attributes of the guide? Where are you talking about yourself as the hero versus the guide? So that's kind of foundational and is always there. But then to your question about like, how do you adapt that? You might have multiple heroes that you need to speak to, right? If you've got a scaling company and now you've got different product lines, and maybe those products or services are purchased by different individuals within the organizations that you sell to. And so you might need to adapt that existing what we call a brand script. So there's 7 parts to the story brand framework. When we're taking clients through that, we say, okay, here are the 7 parts. Let's fill those in for your context and create what we call a brand script. So with that in mind, we might need to create a new one when you have that new persona or a new product launch, or you're selling to a different region. It might not be completely rewritten. We could use that as a foundation, but we might need to make some tweaks. And now this becomes the foundation for your marketing motion over here. So I would say that's kind of some of the things that stay the same and some of the things that change a little bit based on a scaling company.
That's really cool. It sounds like you guys have kind of thought this process all the way through in terms of what's the next problem that we're going to have once we solve problem number one, right? And
Yeah.
and thinking about scaling companies, that's how you scale. Not only yourself, but that's how you scale your clients. Is okay, what's the next problem my clients are going to have? What's the problem after that? And that's how you keep clients with you for a really long time.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's
I
great.
I and I think the word that you said there is so key. It's the problem, right? I heard this advice from another guy I know in the agency world, and he said so many agencies try to position themselves as the solution, but when you do, you end up having to try and convince everyone that you're better or cheaper or both. But when instead of talking about yourself as the solution, you start talking about the problems that you solve, then you become the default solution. And so we've even packaged up what we call our marketing blueprint service. This is an initial engagement that we offer to new clients before we say, hey, sign up on a 12-month retainer with us for implementing HubSpot and doing your email marketing and paid social and all these sorts of things. And we've kind of stair stepped it based on the problems like you were just talking about. They can get help with just messaging or the messaging. And now let's wireframe and build out the sitemap for your website based on that messaging. Okay, what are you doing to drive visitors to that website now that you've got a high converting, well thought out website? Okay, we could do a messaging blueprint and then a marketing or a website blueprint. Now we have a marketing blueprint that has those first 2 layers, but now we're doing an audit of your competitors, your existing marketing channels. How are we telling that story that is foundational and helped us build the copy for your website? But how does that influence every LinkedIn post that you do and every Facebook ad and every blog post, those sorts of things? And so I like the way that you framed it. I think you're kind of alluding to what I've seen us be able to build in our offers within the agency in kind of that stair step of the next problem, the next problem.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that marketing blueprint. I know you guys have developed that to create that clear plan before producing and promoting content. And I could you walk us through how this process has helped a client avoid like wasting time and resources while achieving better results?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the marketing blueprint, we're often starting with that messaging. We'll take clients through, teach them the StoryBrand framework. And then the next problem is now what? How do we make this work for us? Right. Then we help them develop that brand script. Then the next problem is, okay, now what? Right. Okay, we need to translate this to the website. If we now have this website that communicates really well, how do we not only have direct calls to action, so we have a high converting website, but then we're auditing things like what transitional calls to action do you have on your website? What sort of lead magnets do you have available if people aren't ready to book a demo, schedule a discovery call, whatever that, kind of a main call to action is. So that's one of the first things that we're auditing on an existing website or planning as we build a new one for a client. Then we're looking at what HubSpot has gone from the funnel to the flywheel. We really look at it as there really is a funnel and a flywheel, right? Because you're attracting strangers, you're converting visitors, and then you're closing prospects into customers. And then you have the flywheel once their, journey as a client starts. And so that's what we actually do for our clients is say, okay, we've got the messaging framework and we know how that's going to translate to the website. Now let's look at where are your potential customers? How are they finding you or not finding you? How are they finding their competitors? Today, even if everything is manual, and like you said, you're not doing anything from a marketing perspective, you still have a customer or client journey that folks are going through, right? They're getting a call from an SDR, they're booking a meeting. How long does that sales process take? What is the closing process? What is the handoff to get signed up for your product or get onboarded? And so we start with kind of mapping out that audit of both the funnel from a marketing perspective and the flywheel that happens after you close them as a customer to see the journey's not completely linear, but what about that can we figure out so that we can optimize that? And now we build the marketing plan against that, right? Okay, you're attracting customers on this channel, your competitor's seeing some success over here. Let's test that in the first 3 months. And then in the next 3 months, and that's often what we're doing with a marketing plan is a 12-month plan is great. But then the next problem is what do we do this quarter? So we always break that down quarterly. And what I like to tell our new clients is we plan annually, we adjust quarterly, and then we report monthly. And so that's how we take that audit that we do to assess the situation, build a plan, and then execute on that. But as the famous Mike Tyson quote goes, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So we try and account for that with those quarterly and monthly elements of the 12-month marketing plan.
That's really cool. That's a genius approach. I love that. There's this investment into a client before they ever become a client of yours. And it's something that not only helps them right off the bat before they decide to say yes to you guys, but also helps you guys too, because you're going to go through this anyway. And so you might as well front load it, get it out of the way first, and then that's going to build the foundation for everything else. And I want to touch on something that you said there. I mean, you mentioned that a lot of clients come to you guys for a new website, but you really focus on that foundational messaging first. And I was curious, how do you convince clients of the importance of stepping back and refining their messaging before diving into that website build?
Yeah. I would say one, I'm still refining my talk track. So this is a good instance to just kind of practice that yet again and reinforces the importance of messaging. It's so meta, right? And so I think the best way I've heard Jay Owen, our founder here at Business Builders, describe it is we've been around for 25 years, which is an eternity for a marketing agency. And when we started, he was a college kid building websites out of his bedroom, I'm pretty sure. And he tells these stories of someone would come to him, hey, I want a quote on a website. And he would say, okay, here's what it'll cost. They say yes. And then the next question is, well, what do you want to put on it? And over time, we've realized that that is completely backwards in the way that you should do things. And it kind of puts the design before the words. And something we say often that I think helps new clients understand this is design builds trust, but words are what sell. And what I mean by that is when you land on a website, if the design is horrible and it looks like it was built for Netscape in 1997, you're like, okay, is this company even legit? Right? But the next thing you're doing is you're reading the words on the page and seeing, does this product or service understand the problem I'm trying to solve? Do I believe that they can help me solve it? And is there enough value for me to go through that value exchange to have my problem solved with this product or service? And so if you start with, hey, let's go design a pretty website and then we'll try and force the copy into it, you're doing it backwards based on what's going to get you the best results. And we've had people go and say, hey, we just want someone to give us a quote and go build us a website. And they've done that. And then the website is not achieving the goals that they wanted to, because the goal is not to have a new website, right? The goal is to drive more traffic to a property that you own and convert more of those visitors into customers. And in order to do that, you need to plan accordingly and have that messaging foundation first, because the words are what sell, right? And start there. And then the design is what enhances that and make sure that you're legit and you don't look like you've got a website from 1997.
Right. I really like that approach. And the question in my mind as you were talking was, do you think that a website with high converting copy wouldn't make up for a really bad design? Like, do you think you could still drive conversions if it had good copy, but not a great design?
Mm. It's interesting. I bet that my friends over at Spiralize probably have some data on this. They do a bunch of A/B testing on especially B2B SaaS websites. I'd be curious to see if they have any data on this. So I can't say from a data-backed perspective what the case would be there, but I think it's kind of like they're both contributing, right? How much trust is there to get me to continue reading the words on the site versus how compelling that copy is? So I think that there's probably a point of diminishing return, right? Like if you've
Yeah.
gotten good enough design, but really compelling copy,
Mhm.
you could keep tweaking that design and tweaking that design, but you're probably not going to see any greater performance. There's probably a threshold on the bottom end as well, I think is the best way that I would answer that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they play off of each other. It's probably the best way to go about it, kind of like you're saying.
It's a good question.
I want to change gears a little bit, and I want to just curious about you personally. I mean, having led sales at a previous agency and worked as an in-house marketer, how has that dual experience influenced your approach to generating new business for business builders?
Yeah. So for me, it's given me kind of this well-rounded experience to be able to, I think, be more effective, especially in an agency. I talk to so many agencies. I'm also leading our community efforts at an agency community called Agency Builders. And I'm talking to a lot of those folks. I'm seeing the questions that they're asking in our free peer-to-peer Slack community. And a lot of them are saying, we don't have time, energy, resources, manpower to be able to invest in our own sales and marketing. We're so reliant on referrals and word of mouth. And for me, having run sales, having been in sales in tech, been in marketing in tech, I've been part of large social media campaigns or webinar campaigns, but I've also prospected on LinkedIn and in person. And so to me, I like, for instance, the way that I've blended those is right now we're doing a campaign around ministries and nonprofits that we help at Business Builders. And we've created a package, taking our blueprint and applying that to that sector. Well, we had a database of cold contacts we could go after. And if I were kind of the typical sales only person, I would just blitz those, cold email, go after them, load up the sequence, right? Try and pitch them on what we're calling our ministry blueprint, going off of our marketing blueprint, but customizing it for that group. But because of my marketing side, I'm like, well, let's go after this group via email, but let's put together a webinar series so that we're getting in front of them. And instead of it's just cold email with a pitch, it's still cold email, but it's with a content offer. Right. And now, as I was just networking on LinkedIn today, so sales hat, then marketing hat. Now back to the sales hat. I'm on LinkedIn. I posted a video, so marketing hat again. And then someone engaged. We started going back and forth on the DMs. He's like, hey, how could I help you? Hey, do you know anyone who would be interested in this Ministry Builder series? Oh, actually, I do. I know a pastor over here. I'll send an intro. And so marketing is all about the scale and sales is all about the one-to-one connection. And so for better or worse, I kind of hop back and forth between those two. And I think that allows me to be more efficient, especially within an agency where you don't have a huge marketing team, you don't have a huge sales team. Sometimes you don't even have one person dedicated to either or both of those functions. So that's a long-winded way of saying like these different tactics and different skill sets that I've picked up being just in sales and just in marketing has allowed me to kind of blend the two in some activities. And that's kind of what it looks like, just kind of taking a peek at my day to day lately, honestly.
That's cool. And I think the agency world needs more of that. But you're right. It's usually the agencies that are getting leads for everybody else, but none for themselves. And so having somebody that has experience in sales does so much for an agency. Somebody who can switch hats from marketing to sales to back to marketing. And so I think that that brings a lot of value to the agency. And I want to talk a little bit about you. You mentioned a little bit of peer-to-peer stuff, and
Yeah.
with your expertise in guiding clients through the StoryBrand framework, how do you approach collaboration or partnerships with other agencies when a client project requires specialized skills or additional resources outside of your guys' core offerings?
Yeah. And I think this is a really important question, not just for how we do things at Business Builders, but I think for the future of the agency business model.
Mhm.
I think that going back to what we were talking about earlier, kind of solving the first problem, the next problem, the next problem, the next problem. You could look at Business Builders and say, well, you guys are kind of the typical full service agency, right? You kind of start with foundations and website, then ongoing marketing services. You do some video and those sorts of things. And one thing we've done with our business model, we're still doing that, but we've kind of taken out the specialist layer. And so we've made this conscious decision coming right down from the top on our leadership team, Jay and Chris, of our agency is made up of leaders, managers, and strategists.
Mhm.
And that specialist layer, we look to our partners who have specific specialty, whether that's video or PPC or paid search or those sorts of things, or specialized AI tools, right?
Mhm.
Or specialist contractors that we can bring in close and they're not part of the full-time team, but they're kind of within the fold, right?
Mhm.
And I think that this model, one, gives us a lot of flexibility from a staffing perspective, gives us the ability to be full service without driving up the costs for our clients so that we can stay competitive and we can drive results that still have a positive ROI. And I think that it allows us to, in the end, drive better results because we're not trying to be absolutely experts in everything, but we can have expertise that goes broad with this model. And I think that that's one that we'll start to see more agencies adopt. I mean, we're even starting to see more specialist agencies that like, we only do LinkedIn ads for B2B SaaS companies, or we only do video ad creation for this type of company. And it's interesting, like even in our agency builders community, it creates this interesting dynamic where we've had some people come in and they're like, we're an agency, but they're kind of one of these specialist agencies that really they get a lot of their new business through kind of full service agencies. And they might come in and kind of pitch their services a little too hard. And we have to like, hold on, that's not the point of this community. Business will happen and that sort of stuff. But I bring that up not to like shame anyone or anything like that, but to call out, I think that this kind of layer, there used to be this divide of like digital and traditional agencies. Now I think there's kind of this stack of kind of full service and specialized agencies, but I don't think that like one is going to win and the other's not. I think that there's going to be this interesting dynamic between those in driving results for clients.
Yeah, I could agree more. I was actually just saying this in one of our previous episodes. Even for us, we're a pretty large agency. Like here at Orange 140, 60 to 70% agency, but
Yeah.
we only do media buying. We only do anything from social all the way to programmatic and digital out of home. And we tell our clients very clearly, like, hey, we've got people we can send you to, but this is what we focus on. And I think
Mhm.
that model, like you're saying, is what's going to scale here in the future because on one end, clients want to not have to reach out to five different agencies for five different things. But on the other end, agencies should really not avoid trying to be a jack of all trades, master of none type of situation. And so I think you're spot on with what you're saying there. And so really quick to touch on this a little bit more, when it comes to agency sales and marketing efforts for themselves, what do you think agencies often overlook in terms of positioning and messaging that could help them attract more business?
Mm. I think going back to talking about the problem versus talking about the solution is probably the biggest misstep most agencies make. And when they talk about the solution, sometimes they're not even talking about themselves. They're trying to hitch their wagon to some other framework or solution. And you could even say, like in what we've talked about, I've talked about one of those frameworks that we leverage heavily, which is StoryBrand. But I'm not just kind of, hey, we're a StoryBrand agency. So if you want StoryBrand, come to us, right?
Right.
We've figured out what are the next problems and we've packaged our services kind of to use that as part of our arsenal, but it's not, hey, this is the solution. StoryBrand is the be all end all. Same thing with HubSpot. I literally saw there was this blog post that's like the 3,659 best HubSpot agencies to work with. I'm getting the exact number wrong, but it was in the thousands and it was a legitimate blog post title. And I'm like, you can't differentiate whether it's ActiveCampaign or HubSpot or GetResponse or whatever. One, you're not going to be differentiated if you're just talking about a solution that's outside of your agency. And
Mhm.
also, if all you're talking about is the solution, then it's a race to the bottom anyway. So I think where agencies can gain more clients, gain more traction, be known for something is talk about the problem that you solve and get really good at talking about that and making your clients just instantly aware they understand my problem. Cause like I said, if that happens, then you become the default solution.
Yeah. That's that's really insightful. That's awesome. Well, this has been great, Logan. I like I said, I wanted to ask how did it feel being on the other side?
It's fantastic, man. You're a great host. You asked some really good questions, and I think that providing your insights as well always makes it for more interesting for the listener. As a host, I'm always trying to think of like, what question would my listener ask if they were able to right now? And I feel like you did that really well in this conversation. So thank you on behalf of myself and everybody listening.
Yeah, thank you so much, Logan. Where can people find out more about your company and yourself?
Yeah. So I would say three things. One, you can find me most easily on LinkedIn, Logan Lyles. My last name is Lyles. I'm pretty easy to find there. If you want to see what we're doing at the agency, if there might be some ways for us to collaborate, you can check us out at businessbldrs.com. So it's business builders, but builders is truncated. And then if you are an agency owner or a member of a leadership team of a marketing agency, whether you're specialty or full service, any sort of agency, I would love to help you get connected into our agency builders community. It's a free peer-to-peer community for agency owners and their leadership teams. We have about 250 folks in there. People are asking questions. People are finding ways to refer business back and forth. And a lot of the conversations are a little bit more frank than what you get on a podcast or on LinkedIn. So hit me up on LinkedIn. It's invite only. Let me know you heard me on this podcast and that you'd like an invite to the agency builders community, and we can get you in.
Great. That sounds awesome. I think that that's going to bring a lot of value to agency owners and leaders. And all of the links will be tagged in the description, so you guys can go to Logan's LinkedIn or his website, or you can reach out to him directly on either of those things. So, Logan, thank you so much for your time today. This is fantastic.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.